Hi there, I'm Mrs. Weiss. Welcome to Latin Storytime. Today, I'm going to be telling you the story of Sleeping Beauty. First, let's learn the Latin words you'll hear in our story. Here is regia. Kings and queens live in grand regies. Regii are decorated with expensive furniture and art, and are big enough to host grand banquets and balls. Next is manus. This is my manus. Can you raise your manu? Now, in this picture, the cat dormit. When you go to bed at night, you condormisces, then dormis all through the night before waking in the morning. This color is ater. Ater is a dark color, like clouds in a storm, or coal that is dug up out of the earth. Finally, one of the most useful words you'll learn in Latin, est, this one. Sum esse fui futurus tells you that something exists or occurs. Sum, Mrs. Weiss. Es, a person ready to listen to a story. And est, Latin story time. All right, we're ready for the story of Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen in beautiful regia. In this regia errant everything that a heart could wish, except just one thing. For errant no little child to run and play about the sunny gardens, and this would often make them very sad. But at last, after many years, they had their wish, and a little baby daughter was born to them. In regia, all errant bustle and hustle, making ready for the christening feast. For the most important guests invited to this christening errant 7 powerful fairies. The queen errant very anxious that they should be pleased. She wanted them esse in a good humor so that they should be kind to her little one. Errant a beautiful summer afternoon when the fairies' chariots came into sight. They errant all good fairies, and how pleased errant with the baby. They all agreed that she esse the prettiest little darling they had ever seen. They were just going to begin the festivities, when all of a sudden, errant something like atra clouds seemed to pass before the tall windows and darken all the room. Then the great doors burst open with a terrible bang, and an old fairy in a long trailing atra gown, with her face almost hidden in atro hood, jumped out of atro chariot and stalked up to the table. The king turned pale, and the queen nearly fainted away, for errant the spiteful fairy Tormentilla, who lived all alone in an atro fortress in the middle of a desert. The poor queen flew out so happy and so busy that she had forgotten all about her and never sent her an invitation. Both the king and queen told her over and over again how very, very sorry they essent not to have asked her. Errant all in vain. She sat scowling until errant time to give the presents. The tiny princess lay dormiens in her cradle, and the 7 fairies began to say what they would each give her. The first stepped forward and said, "She always erret as good as gold." The second, "She erret the cleverest princess in the world." The third, "She erret the most beautiful." The fourth, "She erret the happiest." The fifth, "She will have the sweetest voice that was ever heard." And sixth, "Everyone shall love her." And then Tormentilla strode over to the cradle and said, shaking her atrum crooked stick at the king and queen, "And I say that she shall prick her manum with a spindle and die of the wound." The queen fell on her knees and begged Tormentilla to call back her cruel words. But suddenly the 7th fairy, the youngest of all, said, "Do not cry so, dear queen. I cannot quite undo this wicked enchantment, but I can promise you that your daughter shall not die, but only condormiscet for a few 100 years until a prince shall come and awaken her with a kiss." You can imagine how careful the queen errant of her little girl from then on, and the king made a law that every spindle in the country must be destroyed. Well, the years went by happily enough, until the Princess Miranda was almost 18 years old. And all that the 6 good fairies had promised came true. Now the king and queen had to go away for a few days, and as the princess did not wish to go, they left her behind with her ladies-in-waiting in the beautiful old Regia. For the first 2 days she amused herself very well, but on the third she began exploring all the old rooms and out-of-the-way attics in Regia. She found herself at the top of a narrow winding stairway in a tall turret that seemed even older than all the rest of Regia. And when she lifted the latch of the door in front of her, she saw in the room a little old woman in a high cap spinning at a wheel. She could not imagine what the old woman was doing, for the princess had never seen a spinning wheel in her life, because, as I told you, the king had ordered them all to be destroyed. Now it happened that the poor old woman who lived in this tower had never heard the king's command, for she was deaf. The princess stepped into the room and laid her manum upon the old woman's shoulder. The woman started, looked up, and rubbed her eyes. "Dearie, dearie me," cried she in a high cracked voice, "and who es, my pretty darling?" "Soom, the Princess Miranda," shouted the maiden in her ear, but the old woman could hear nothing. Then the princess pointed to the spindle and made the old woman understand that she wanted to try if she could work it. So the woman nodded, and the princess sat down and took the spindle in her manu. But no sooner did she touch it than she pricked the palm of her manus with the point and sank down in a swoon. Immediately a deep silence fell all around. The old woman moved neither manum nor foot towards the poor maid, and all because she also condormiverat. Below in Regia erat just the same. The king and queen, who had that moment returned from their journey, condormiscebant. The soldiers and men-at-arms dormiebant as they stood. The page boy condormiscebat with his mouth wide open, and a fly that had just been going to settle on his nose condormiscebat too in mid-air. Although the sun had been shining brightly when the princess took the spindle in her manu, no sooner did she prick her manum with the point than atri shadows darkened the sunny rooms and gardens. Erat just as though atra night had overtaken them, but erat no one in or near Regiam to heed whether erat dark or light. This sudden darkness had been caused by a magic wood which had sprung up all around Regiam and its grounds, erat so thick and high that it hid even the topmost towers of the enchanted Regii. Well, the years went on, until 100 years had passed, and Regia and the story of it were all but forgotten. And it happened that a king's son from a neighboring country came hunting that way and got separated from his attendants. He came to a woodcutter's cottage and dismounted to ask his way. An old man lived in this hut, and the young man pointed to the thick atram wood ahead and asked what lay beyond it. Then the old man told him that erat a legend, that beyond the wood esse enchanted Regiam, where a beautiful princess had lain dormiens for 100 years, and whom a prince was to awaken with a kiss. Directly the prince heard this, nothing would serve but he must go there and see for himself if the tale essayed true. So he rode to the edge of the wood and began to push his way through the thorny thicket. It was hard work indeed, but he erat strong and brave, and at last he came to Regiam. There everyone dormiebant. The prince passed on, wondering more and more, till he came at length to the tower in which the princess condormiverat. There he came upon the beautiful Dormiens lady in her glistening white robes. She erat so beautiful that to see her almost took away his breath, and falling on his knees, he bent to kiss her cheek. And as he kissed her, she opened her eyes and said, "Oh, Prince, have you come at last? I have had such pleasant dreams." Then she sat up and gave him her manum, and they went manibus joined together down the stairs and along the corridors, till they came to the throne room. and Errant the king and queen, just awakened too, and they kissed their daughter and welcomed the prince most gladly. And all at the same time the whole Regia was awake. Everything went on exactly as though the spell had lasted 100 seconds instead of years. The prince and princess were married and lived happily ever after. So all ended well. And what more could anyone wish? The end. Thanks for joining me today for Latin Storytime. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye! Hey parents! I want to help your kids keep learning Latin beyond our storytime together. Visit latinstorytime.com/signup for free access to each of my parents' guides, where I give you a list of the new words your child learned today and some tips to help you practice those words naturally in your daily life. And remember to click the YouTube subscribe button so you catch each new episode. Thanks for watching, and I hope your family enjoys your Latin learning together.